So what we're going over today seems simple, but we're going to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. I want to make sure every facet of this process is clear and understandable. Although it seems simple, and it kind of is, there's a lot of nuance that goes into it. And if you understand the nuance, you're that much better of an audio engineer. Most people know how to stick a microphone in front of a vocalist, but most people don't know the manner in which an XLR works. The reason why -12 to -18 dB is an optimal recording environment, and why, even still, you don't necessarily need that range. Most people don't know why phantom power is even necessary or what it does. Most people don't know why microphone level is a thing. Most people don't know there's a bunch of other positions you can use in order to set up a vocal in the proper manner. And there's a bunch of detail and nuance that isn't necessary in order to get a good vocal, but when you do know it, you're going to be that much more of a production ninja, a good producer. All right, I already recorded the video. This is just the intro. Let's go. Hey, what's up? How's it going, everyone? I want to start by saying this. There are a lot of different backgrounds on this channel. There are a lot of different experience levels on this channel as well. Some people far more experienced than I am. Other people just starting off recording, and they're also buying their first piece of gear. So we're going to go over something that might seem simple, but we're also going to go over some of the fundamental reasons why these things are important. Beyond, just having good music and having a good vocalist and having a good vocal take. On the technical side of things, there's really only a few things to make sure you get fundamentally right. Now, that being said, let's start off with everyone's first question. Dynamic or condenser? Now, both of these strategies vary slightly. We're definitely going to be focusing on the condenser approach whenever we test vocals today, but honestly, the approach is rather similar beyond distance. You're going to be a little bit closer to the microphone whenever you're working with a dynamic microphone, and it's also going to be a little bit more forgiving with dynamics. You're not going to clip as easily with the dynamic. Now, either way you look at it on these two microphones, whenever you look at the meter when you're recording, you're going to want to aim for around -12 to -18 dB. This is something I've said over and over again. Not only is this designed to be sort of the optimal level for a microphone to perform at, it also provides plenty of headroom to boost volume with additional processing. We're talking compression, EQ, all the different distortion you might add to give it some taste. But hey, if you have a microphone that is like really gain hungry, like the Shure SM7B, just record quieter. Record at -25 dB, record at -20 dB. Don't try and hit -12 dB on a really gain hungry microphone if it's going to add a lot of hiss. Now, that being said, the problem is not as severe as a lot of people make it out to be. Again, as I've said a lot on this channel, you can use those microphones with those preamps just fine. But this is just common practice for, reducing the noise floor and the amount of noise you get in your signal as you take it further down the processing chain. Now, this is all information I've repeated time and time again, so let's move on to something else. So we're leaving the microphone and we're going into this. An XLR cable. What is an XLR cable and what differentiates it from a regular instrument cable? Like this. This is the one that you plug into all your instruments probably. Well, honestly, it can be boiled down to one single extra wire. Whenever we look at this, hold on. Oh, this might not work. I'll put it in post. Now, XLR actually stands for external line return, which is not something you need to know. But essentially, when you look at a normal instrument cable, it's going to carry two different pieces of metal inside of them, two different wires. One of them is going to be your signal, what you're actually sending to the amplifier or the monitors or whatever you're using to boost that volume. And then one of them is the ground. It's the thing that stops the electrical current from literally killing you. Now, with XLR cables, what we've done is we've added one extra piece of cable, flipped or polarized. Now, without getting overly technical, what this means is it's taking the exact opposite signal of our incoming signal. Now, based on our discussion of phase that we've had in the past, we know that if we take one signal and we reverse the polarity of it, we've essentially canceled out that entire signal. Now, the result of this process is essentially no noise. While you might notice whenever you're working with an amplifier and a guitar, you might hear some hiss coming from bad electronics, from added noise floor, from distortion pedals. All these things increase the amount of noise that you hear on an instrument cable, and some people like that. I'm sometimes one of those people. But when we're working with recording devices, we want these signals to be as clean as possible. We don't want all this noise coming in. So XLRs are going to be quieter. They're going to be quieter over a longer distance. And they're also going to be overall more stable for taking that microphone level signal and taking it into the console, the audio interface, whatever you happen to be recording into. Now, all of what I've just said can be described as either a balanced connection, meaning an XLR cable. There are also some other forms of this, like a TRS cable, or unbalanced connections, otherwise known as instrument cables, quarter-inch cables, TS cables, call them what you want. Now, once you've gone from the microphone outside the cable and then into your audio interface, you are met with phantom power. Now, we've discussed 48-volt power or phantom power and why you need it in order to power a condenser microphone, but we've never described what it's actually doing. I have, however, in a couple of other videos, described why a condenser microphone works. The reason is because of the capsule at the top here. So if you look at something like a blue baby bottle, a microphone that very obviously has its capsule on display for the world to see, you're going to see basically two thin sheets of metal. One of them is the diaphragm that moves, and then one of them is the base plate. It's that change in distance between the diaphragm and the base plate that actually produces a small electrical charge. The change in that electrical charge is called the capacitance, and that's actually what's creating the audio signal. Now, inside of a condenser microphone, which is more complicated than a dynamic microphone, by the way, there are a few essential moving parts that need to be powered.
The amplifier.
There's a small amplifier inside of this that takes this tiny electrical charge and boosts it to something called microphone level.
Hey, what's up? I'm editing this video now and decided to interrupt myself because the term amplifier is misused how I used it. In an effort to simplify terms down to make it seem more digestible, I just blatantly used the wrong term. It's not an amplifier. It's called an impedance converter, and it can take the form of a transformer or a vacuum tube. Those are the most common ones. Basically what these do though is take the actual signal and provide enough current to then be transformed into microphone level, which we are about to get into. Impedance converter, not amplifier. Sorry.
Microphone level is one of a few different levels, along with line level, instrument level. These are standard practice volume levels that we take and we put it inside of the signal to be amplified further. So 48-volt power is the power necessary to take that tiny electrical charge and change it into something that could be considered microphone level. Again, we're going into technical detail about things so you know what all of these different moving parts are doing, but at the very essence of what we're talking about today, it's very simple. So stay with me. Now, it's no secret that I'm working in an unideal recording environment. In fact, it's kind of what I'm known for on my channel. Before, I was working in Spain on a busy street next to a window in an untreated room. Now, I'm working in Brooklyn on a busy street in an untreated room with a rug, so I guess that's a little better. That being said, there's a few variables that are completely within your control that you can take and use to your advantage in the most untreated of environments. First off, avoid corners. Corners have bass. That's why bass traps exist. The way that audio reflects off of rooms and other flat surfaces, bass inherently ends up in the corners. So the obvious solution to this would be sit in the center of the room. And to that, I would say not quite. I want you to stay slightly off axis from the center of your room, because the center of the room is also a point of reflection. Obviously, for a very symmetrical room, the center is going to be a place where a lot of waveforms intersect. The safest area, in my opinion, is slightly off axis from the center in a symmetrical square room. Now, my room right now is like, maybe 30 feet by 10 feet. It's a long rectangle. And if we make a little diagram, which I'm going to do in the edit, you want to have your singer facing the long side. And the reason for this is to try and avoid unnecessary room reflections. In the example you're going to see today, I have Ethan, our vocalist, facing the long side. So whenever he's singing, he's not getting that vocal and reflecting it off of the wall and then right back on the wall in front of me and then right back there and bouncing back and forth, and the microphone isn't picking all of that up. And the last thing is to just avoid windows. Every material, obviously, at least in your head, you know this, has a fixed unit of reflectivity. Now, windows are potentially the most reflective material you can find. So I've just described to you an overly clinical approach of how to find the most ideal environment for kind of an empty, sterile room. Avoid corners. Avoid the center of the room. Stay off axis. Sing in the direction of the longest distance from a wall and avoid windows. Another approach might just be find the most acoustically dead place. This is sort of a controversial opinion, because if you have an environment that absorbs a lot of reflections, your room is also going to absorb a lot of frequencies. For example, you know those like YouTube rooms where they put like a bunch of like sound dampening material all over the walls to the point where it's literally just sound dampening material and it looks like a dungeon? Those materials actually absorb high-end frequencies. The result is you're going to have a darker signal, because not only are you absorbing room reflections, which was the goal, you're also absorbing a lot of like 7K to 10K range. All that stuff is being eaten by this material. So you could do like an acoustically dead place, or you can find a more lively place that maybe isn't going to cancel as many signals. But above all else, this acoustically strategic placement I've just told you to put your microphone in, it may be awful to record in. It just might be experientially not a fun place to sing. Like, this is an overly clinical approach to recording a vocal take. If it's going to result in an undesirable location to sing and your vocalist isn't going to get a good take, I would for sure stick them in front of a window with a good view and sacrifice a little bit of audio quality, then stick them inside of a closet next to all your dirty clothes. Be aware of how your perfect recording space affects the vocal take. Okay, so with all this voiceover out of the way, we're going to go into some examples. We have 3 positions to try today. One of them, position 1, is the most common one. We also have one that is really commonly used for our vocalist. He uses it all the time, and he's also an audio engineer with the same degree I have, so he probably knows more than I do. Then we have one sort of experimental position that we wanted to try as well. Hey, I should also mention that Ethan just released one of his debut singles, Someone Has a Plan. Here's a little clip of it now. Please go check it out when you're done with this video. It's genuinely a banger, so you're gonna like it.
Can't see the need to move from our knees and compromise your ties to hold a hand. Maybe it's worth it when you're alone.
So one thing that we want to keep in mind whenever we're recording on a condenser, we've already gone over XLR, we've gone over mic inputs, all that different stuff. We're now going to talk about the distance we use whenever we're recording. One thing to keep in mind, use your pop filter as the gauge of measurement between the singer and the mic. So for example, most singers, now Ethan's an audio engineer, so he's probably not going to do this, but most singers that aren't an audio engineer are going to want to get as close to the microphone as possible. This is not what we want. What we want is about 7 to 12 inches away in terms of distance. So in order to do that, we're going to use the pop filter as a means to keep the singer at bay. I usually put the pop filter about 5 inches away, and then the singer kind of moves in between, fluctuates between the distances of like 7 to 12 inches. So that's the first position.
I've been walking all the halls I used to crawl. I've been singing all the songs that made me tall.
So this is the next position we're going to go over today. I'm actually not that well versed in this position, but Ethan is, and he's the actual singer. So you want to go over this position and why you use it?
Yeah, sure. So I really like this position because it forces the singer to look up a little bit, which tends to open up your chest cavity and just everything in here. It gives generally a little bit of a brighter sound as opposed to when your head is down. It sounds a little bit darker, more nasal. It forces the singer to have good singing technique and good posture.
I've been walking all the halls I used to crawl. And I've been singing all the songs that made me tall.
All right, so this is kind of an experiment that we're going to do for the last position. We're still using basically the exact same measurements, 5 inches away. I'm going to keep repeating that, but we've got 2 slight differences. It's really common with the pop shield to basically put it at a slight angle, and this is believed to help with plosives to a certain degree, but we're going to actually experiment a little bit more and take the microphone and put it slightly off axis. The hope is this is going to take out a little bit of the high end, maybe take the sibilance down a little bit, and also take some of the mouth noises down a little bit too.
I've been walking all the halls I used to
crawl. And I've been singing all the songs that made me tall. I've been walking all the halls I used to crawl. And I've been singing all the songs that made me tall. I hear my not-so-baby brother on the other side of dusty bedroom walls, and his voice, it starts to sound something like my father's, when he said, plan for all your failure and you just might pull that punch. There's 1,000 ways to it up, so hold on to your tongue. He said never trust forever, 'cause you'll find you don't know much. And he said always measure twice before you cut, before you cut, before you cut.
All right, folks, I hope that was helpful. You can follow me on Instagram at RealAudioHaze. You can also email me if you're interested in doing a project or taking lessons at RealAudioHaze@gmail.com. And that is all. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.